As Americans, particularly as middle to upper class Americans, I would like to suggest that the water we're swimming in, the stream that we're floating in, is one of chasing limitlessness. If we simply float and allow ourselves to be carried by that stream, I think that our mindset will be one of removing limitations and embracing limitlessness. The whole point of this vlog is exploring what it means and what it could look like to embrace limitations. And in this particular episode, I'd like to share some practices that could facilitate that, with particular focus on practicing meditation. But first, to set the stage, I want to share some ways that our culture propagates limitlessness. A study 2 years ago revealed that Netflix has approximately 13,000 videos available for view. Amazon had approximately 480 million products available for purchase. And currently, Spotify has about 30 million songs available to stream. And it's estimated that 300 hours of video are uploaded to YouTube every single minute. And approximately 5 billion videos are viewed on YouTube every day. Quick recognition of irony. I'm about to contribute to that by uploading this video. I was curious how many restaurants there are in Pittsburgh. Approximately 2,700. And then from where I sit right now, there are about 757 grocery stores in a 25-mile radius. My wife Carly spent a year teaching math in a remote village in Tanzania. Upon returning to the United States, she experienced reverse culture shock, particularly around going grocery shopping. And so she's going to share a little bit about that experience and about some ways that she saw the Tanzanian culture benefiting from their own embracing of limitation.
I left the grocery store empty-handed. It was the first time I tried to shop after returning from a year living in rural Tanzania. Had grocery stores grown while I was gone? A whole aisle of chips? Could so many types of water exist? I was overwhelmed, paralyzed by the limitless choices. I know my experience was not unique either. In fact, I believe it is an almost ubiquitous experience for those returning from significant time in less developed countries. I had spent the last year of my life eating primarily what could be grown within walking distance from my house. I had watched my neighbor plant the beans that I would eat later that year. I watched my friends harvest the potatoes that I would eat that week. I watched my students climb trees to cut down avocados that I would buy from them later that day. When spinach was in season, that was the vegetable I ate that month. When it was cabbage, I got creative with cabbage recipes. The extent of my food choices for the better part of a year had been whether potatoes or rice would be my starch that evening. Preparing food took a lot of time, but choosing it did not. My choices were limited, and I was content. There are a lot of things that differ between the American and Tanzanian cultures in which I have lived, and so I hesitate to say that any one thing is the reason why my American friends are different than my Tanzanian friends. But I do think that the limited choices that my Tanzanian friends have, exemplified in their food choices, brings about a cultural contentment. What is in front of them is enough. Whether it is the lack of choices that leads to their contentment, I cannot be sure. But I do know that I long for that contentment here, amidst the unlimited options that I have in the chip aisle.
I'm a morning person, and typically upon waking up, I'm flooded with thoughts. On good days, these thoughts are of ambitions for the day, things I'm looking forward to, things I hope to accomplish. On bad days, these thoughts are filled with fear, anxiety, and dread. For years, I would simply get swept up by this current and be carried by it from that point forward in the day, riding this roller coaster of adrenaline and exhaustion. However, over the past several months, I began meditating first thing in the morning, and I found it immensely helpful. It's begun a pattern of stepping onto the shore of that raging current of thoughts and simply observing them and accepting them instead of being carried by them and tossed around. So what is meditation and why do it? To help answer these questions, I want to read a quote from the creator of the Headspace app, which I've used for meditation. His name's Andy Puttycombe. He says, "We can't change every little thing that happens to us in life, but we can change the way that we experience it. That's the potential of meditation. You don't have to burn any incense, and you definitely don't have to sit on the floor. All you need to do is to take 10 minutes out a day to step back, to familiarize yourself with the present moment so that you get to experience a greater sense of focus, calm, and clarity in your life. Most people assume that meditation is all about stopping thoughts, getting rid of emotions, somehow controlling the mind, but actually it's about stepping back, seeing the thought clearly, witnessing it coming and going." And this is part of what's been immensely helpful for me personally. Through this practice of meditation that involves observing thoughts rather than chasing them or pushing them away, I've realized how toxic my own attitude towards my thoughts has been. If my thoughts were negative, I rejected them and condemned myself for even having them. If they were positive or exciting, I would pat myself on the back and get puffed up with pride. But taking a few minutes a day to simply observe and accept my thoughts before making any judgments has helped me to create more mental space and to have more mental energy throughout the day. So in terms of the nuts and bolts of meditation, I'm not going to go too far into the weeds. There's some great resources out there, and if you are to download the Headspace app, it'll do a great job of that for you. But just to kind of describe how I got started and what the journey's been like. So I started with the Headspace app, downloaded it on the App Store. It starts out, there's 3 minutes a day for 10 days. 3 minutes a day of guided meditation, where this guy, Andy Puttycombe, guides you through meditation. After those first 10 days, I found the catch. You have to subscribe. So at first I was like, I don't feel like paying for this, so I'm just going to call it quits on the Headspace app and go another route. So I tried essentially doing my own guided meditation. I also used YouTube videos. There's a ton of guided meditations on YouTube. I searched like Christian guided meditation, and there's some great guided meditations on just like a brief psalm or another passage that helps to guide that meditation time. So these ways of meditating were still good, but I found myself really missing the guided meditation on the Headspace app. So I ended up subscribing, and I'm subscribing at it's about $8 a month, and so far I would say it's worth it. I want to get a little bit more personal and share how meditation has been helpful to me, and to do that I want to read an excerpt from this book called The Genesee Diary by Henry Nouwen. He spent some time, 7 months, at an abbey in upstate New York called the Abbey of the Genesee, which is actually where I'll be headed in just a week to do a couple days silent retreat. But he has an entry in here that seemed like it was just pulled from my own head, except for the fact that he says everything extremely eloquently and in a way that I could only dream of articulating my thoughts, but it's super helpful, so I just want to read it. What do you do when you are always comparing yourself with other people? What do you do when you always feel that the people you talk to, hear of, or read about are more intelligent, more skillful, more attractive, more gentle, more generous, more practical, or more contemplative than you are? What do you do when you can't get away from measuring yourself against others, always feeling that they are the real people, while you are a nobody, or even less than that? It is obvious that these feelings are distorted, out of proportion, the result of projections, and very damaging for a healthy spiritual life. But still, they are no less real and can creep up on you before you are aware of it. Before you know it, you are comparing other people's age and accomplishments with your own, and before you know it, you have entered into a very harmful psychological competition and rivalry. What do? Analyze more? It's not hard to see the neurotic dynamism, but it is not easy to break through it to a mature life. There's much to say about this, and much has been said by psychologists and psychotherapists, but what to say about it from a spiritual perspective? John Hughes talked about that moment, that point, that spot that lies before the comparison, before the beginning of the vicious circle or the self-fulfilling prophecy. That is the moment, point, or place where meditation can enter in. It is the moment to stop reading, speaking, socializing, and to waste your time in meditation. When you find your mind competing again, you might plan an empty time, quote unquote, of meditation. In this way, interrupting the vicious circle of your ruminations and entering into the depth of your own soul. There you can be with him who was before you came, who loved you before you could love, and who has given you your own self before any comparison was possible. In meditation, we can come to the affirmation that we are not created by other people, but by God. That we are not judged by how we compare with others, but by how we fulfill the will of God. So a quick recommendation for some resources. I've mentioned several times the Headspace app. One word, Headspace. You can find it in the App Store, whether you have an iPhone or an Android, and I highly recommend it. Another recommendation, two good friends of mine, Andrew and Mike Tasselmeyer, they're part of a band called Hotel Neon, and they play ambient music. So typically these are soundscapes. Sometimes there's a kind of repetitive and minimalistic melody that enters in. And I've utilized their music in the context of meditation, and I highly recommend it. I just read an excerpt from a book. I purchased that book from Byron Borger, who owns Hearts and Minds Bookstore. The actual store is in Dallastown, PA, but he's also incredibly quick at shipping any books you want. Okay, I'd like to share with you a few ideas for ways that you can embrace limitation practically. Maybe even subvert our cultural propagation of limitlessness. I call it Sam's bag of tricks of the trade. Spatot. Fun activities that slow me down. Fathomsd. A few of my favorite things. A fumft. Sam's little bag of subversions. Slabaz. Okay, these are just some things that I enjoy that help me slow down. Okay, let's see what we have here. Ooh. This here is a French press. Coffee. Particularly making coffee in a bit slower and deliberate manner is a nice way of slowing down and savoring the moment. Okay. Aha. Vinyl record. I enjoy listening to music, particularly on vinyl. It's really difficult to skip tracks on a vinyl, so typically you just drop the needle and listen to a full album. And it's a nice way of slowing down, and you get the enjoyment of looking at a larger album cover, and you can kind of appreciate the album artwork in a different way. Alright. Here's that book I read from earlier. Reading, great way to slow down. Reading something that's not on a screen also I find helpful. Again, if you're going to buy books, buy it from Byron Borger at Hearts and Minds Bookstore. Okay. This is a little recording device that is actually what I use to record the music you're hearing right now. Bought it off of Craigslist for like $50. Met a nice guy. It was pretty cool. I like recording music, and it's one of my favorite hobbies. And yeah. Ooh, journal. Writing in a journal. Bible. I highly recommend reading the Bible. One practice that I've embraced related to the Bible, and that is related to slowing down, is a way of reading the Bible called Lectio Divina. And essentially, it's kind of a more slow, meditative, savoring, marinating type of way of reading Scripture. Highly recommend it. I would do a terrible job of explaining how to do it, so if that sounds appealing to you, just Google Lectio, Lecdio, Divina, Divina. Thanks.